All right. Well, Tony, thanks so much for joining me and spending a little bit of your day talking about sports and what you do. And if you just start and give us a little introduction about who you are, how you got to the Thunder, and kind of what you're doing there.
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Tony. I've been an athletic trainer for the Thunder for the past 10 years. It's been a nice time to be a part of the NBA. Prior to that, I was in Los Angeles, California, working for Exos in Santa Monica. Before that, I was in a small town in Illinois at a college called Eastern Illinois University as an athletic trainer full time, which is also where I got my master's degree. And after I graduated with my master's, they hired me full time, which was nice. Originally from Kansas, I went to Kansas State University where I got my undergrad. And then I also did some time, which I like to talk about because it was formative at a junior college for some schooling where I got my start as an athletic trainer, which was pretty neat because they don't have a lot of people there. They have one athletic trainer and they have a full array of sport, including a highly touted football team that won national championships over 10 years. So I got to be a part of a national championship with them, as well as just be a part of the hard work and the grind that goes in to the day-to-day work of an athletic trainer and in sporting culture. And so that's kind of just where I got my start with all that. So I like to go all the way back to the beginning because that's where it definitely started, which was a great start.
Okay. So I want to ask you a little bit while you kind of went through the junior college, you've worked a little bit privately, you're now working for an NBA team. What are kind of some of the challenges or differences that you've experienced in those different groups? Because you said junior college, you're responsible for everything.
Right.
NBA, a much smaller player base, and you're not the only athletic trainer as well.
Right. I think that's really the biggest pieces is just really trying to figure out the lines of communication. They're plentiful in nature in any area, be it high school, junior college. There's just different aspects to each and different people in each area. High school, you've got parents. Junior college,
Right.
You've got coaches. In the big time college setting, you've got a lot of coaches, athletic directors, and then private sector usually have just somebody who's in your department, and then when you get to the minor leagues and into the pro setting, it's just very heightened communication with front office, coaches, players, agents, and just all that information is very important. And now, even nowadays, we're getting into parents of some of the younger players that are with us. So the stakeholders that are within and around all of these players is massive, and they all require information to be given to them and appropriate information. This is their player, this is their person, their sibling, their son or daughter, somebody that they've hired, somebody they've scouted, somebody they put a lot of time and effort into, and somebody they probably have put a lot of money into. So they all deem, and rightfully so, a lot of information and a lot of care, which comes first. And with care, you gotta distribute information appropriately.
Well, before I go on to the next question, if you do have questions for Tony, put them in your chat box and we'll try and get them up and get him to answer them. You talked about caring for the athletes, which is your primary responsibility. A lot of pressure in that too, when you've got essentially $1 billion industry and the players are so important to that. And if you get it wrong or you can't get the player back in a certain time frame, it could cost the team and it could be very financially expensive. You get a lot of pressure on just kind of how long is this person going to take? How can we hurry this up?
Absolutely. And we're always weighing the risks and the benefits. And with weighing risk and benefit, you can't just put some type of algorithm to it. You could try, and I'm sure people do. I think that's a point, and that's a piece of information. Like if he's out this long, we probably won't win this many games, and that could create this kind of issue. And this is how much money that we're wasting. But you got to put that to the side in my place, and in the place that where I work. You got to put all that to the side and kind of go back to what I just stated is you got to get everybody's input. So all stakeholders, all people that are surrounded by this player and the player, to understand what is best. Is this player okay with trying to come back maybe a little bit earlier? Does he understand the risks? Does his agent understand the risk? Does the parents understand the risk? And are we all okay with it? And if we're okay with it, we might not be okay with it, and they're fighting us to get him back on the court. So it's definitely a business decision, and in any business decision, somebody's going to give a little bit more, and somebody's going to take a little bit more. So it's a big balancing act of all those pieces. But when it all comes down to it, is the patient, the players, beliefs and what their kind of thoughts are and where they're at. So we definitely take those into account massively.
Sounds like there's a lot of communication going on.
A lot. It is nonstop communication. I think a bigger portion of what we do in this role is communication. You've got to be able to handle people better than really anything else that you do. You could be the most talented manual therapist, the best coach from an X's and O's standpoint, the best data analyst that has the most research out there. But if you can't communicate effectively, if you can't manage people effectively, you might be on the outside of a team, which is an okay place to be. You can make a great living out there. And there are a lot of people that we look to that are consultants that they're on the outside of the team, and we might bring them in for a short amount of time to communicate with us. But then once we get that information, we communicate it out to those people that are all in that circle, that small circle.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've kind of got your group of personnel. You've got your player, who is the person who is, your focus is on, and then you have all these stakeholders around this player who also have to be informed because they all have an interest, I guess, in that player.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was great to have this opportunity, but Tim, you put me, in as a contributing author in this book, and that is definitely stated within this book and outlined in the book because it's just so important. You have to have that understanding, and that's why in our book that we put out together, and with definitely a few other people, that was a big part of making that point.
Shameless plug, coaching for sports performance, right?
Yes.
And if you haven't got a copy, Tony and I obviously recommend it. It's got a lot of great info. Tony wrote the chapter on injury care and prevention, which is obviously a crucial component of working in sports. Tony, tell us what it's like to be an athletic trainer in terms of a typical day. And I know there is no such thing, but what would, for example, an off-season day be like? And what would be, a kind of a training day or preparation for a game day?
Sure. So, as we all are starting to understand, there's not much of an off season anymore for anybody. From a high school setting, I've got 2 high schools just around the corner from my house, and I know that they're working out through the entire year. For an off season for me, a lot of times things are more internal, like in house. It really looks like a regular day. It's just there's no games, which kind of sometimes is good and sometimes is bad. Getting to the facility in the morning, getting things prepared for the day, for whatever athlete I'm going to see, to do his rehab, do some therapy, get him in the right place to have a meeting with the strength and conditioning staff, with a nutritionist, just kind of leading the way wherever that person's going for the week and for the day. Many times it's the same through the season. We just have games. the games definitely add another component to our day. It adds more load, kind of what we say, to our day, and more hours, man hours. So um, during a practice day, we get in, around 8, practice is at 11. We prep all the way up to practice. If we're seeing players, getting them ready, taping and bracing is definitely a part of our day, but there's a lot of prehab exercises, therapy that goes into getting a guy ready to get on the court. And then we are there to watch practice to make sure everything stays status quo. If somebody were to get like a cut, we take care of the cut so they can get back on the court. If somebody were to get injured, we're definitely going to take the necessary steps to take care of them. So if it's calling up our doctor, referring out, getting MRIs, getting X-rays, communicating again with whoever needs to know about what's going on with this player if he is to get injured, and then post practices, are they getting in the weight room? Do they need to recover from the activity? Is there more therapy they need? Promoting them to go get some type of nutrition post activity, and then prepping for the next day. When you add the game to it, we'll have a shoot around in the morning, and then we're to the arena. Let's say it's a 7 o'clock game. We're to the arena around 4 o'clock, which is pretty early, and prepping again for the game, taping, bracing, therapies, meetings. And then our game starts at 7. We're on the sideline to ensure that guys are staying safe. If something is to happen, can they re-enter into a game? Do they need to come out? Is it a cut that we need to take care of right away so that there's no bleeding while they're playing? And then post game, activities are just usual kinds of things. There could be some stretching. There's cold tub use. Really just kind of scanning the entire team. With all of my colleagues and making sure that we're not missing anything, because as soon as we can get information, we need to act on it. We can't really wait till the next day for things to pop up, even though that happens. But if we can jump on it right after the game, then we're better off down the road. And that's where, like you kind of alluded to at the start of this interview, is what's the difference in the speed of decisions in pro sports is light speed, and we have to be very ready for that. When you're in a high school, there's one athletic trainer. It's hard to take care of all these people and be aware of every little thing that's going on. Well, there's 4 of us for 15 guys.
Yeah.
And so we have to know if a guy's getting a blister on his heel right away, because that could affect so many other things too. An ankle sprain that a guy played through the rest of the game with, but tomorrow he's probably going to be sore. So let's start treatment tonight and getting things going through the evening. Does he need to take something home? Instructions, medicines? Does he need to see a physician? We need to get that going right away, so that we can keep, we probably have a game in it either the next day or a day after, because that's just how the NBA is.
If I was to ask you again, there's no typical day, kind of, it sounds like your day begins really, really early and often goes pretty late, long hours by the sounds of it.
The hours are long. The hours are long, and we do a good job, and we've learned a lot through the years that we need to recover. We need to find time to step away. We all have families. We need to take care of them. They need us there. So we are not just hanging around to hang around, but there's plenty of work to do. And we all try and balance it out. Well, I'll just leave it at that. We try and balance it out, but we're traveling. I'm traveling with the team everywhere they're going. So I'm gone, 41 games out of the year, plus any playoff games, plus any travel in the off season to see players. So it's a heavy burden.
So I want to come back to that in a second, but you talked about traveling in the off season, and I remember the first time that I met you and we talked, I was surprised at how much traveling you did do in the off season. Can you explain why? What is it that you do in the off season that requires travel?
Absolutely. So we have a lot of players will go outside of the team and the organization and go home. Really, they have a house here and they probably have a house somewhere else, and that's usually where they live. So we want to take whatever the Thunder has to offer here in Oklahoma City and pass that on to them wherever that might be. So that could be Los Angeles, that could be Spain, that could be really about anywhere.
Yeah.
So we just want to bring what we have, all of our offerings and services that are in-house, and we want to spread those out to wherever they're at to make sure that they're still being serviced and taken care of. We feel like we know our athletes the best. We're just around them that much. We know their personalities very well. We know a lot of things. So we feel like we're just best suited to continue care wherever they're at. But if we feel like there's some necessity to pass them on, or the player wants to work with somebody else, if it's a coach, if it's a trainer, if it's a physical therapist, whatever it might be, that's when we enact a lot of our communication. So we create relationships with these people that they want to be around. We visit them repeatedly through the season to show support and make sure that when they come back to us when the season starts, we are right on board with whatever they had been doing that season or that summer and the off season, and we can continue the care from there. So there's just no holes in any of their care.
Right. So as an example, Chris Paul decides he wants to come to Tallahassee and train with Tim. Tony might be coming with him to make sure that practices or what he's doing with me is safe and effective, and it's also getting the treatment that he needs, given the fact that he's a high value asset to the organization. Does that summarize it right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We got a little storm that rolled in. I am actually gonna have to bounce off this thing because I gotta take care of this. Sorry about that.
Welcome back, everybody. If you're just joining us, either for the first time or the second time, Tony had a little emergency. He's back online. Let me just make sure we're live everywhere, and it looks like we are. So a question came in. Andrew is asking this. He said, as the trainer for a pro team where the pros may hire their own personal trainers, nutritionists, etc., how do you handle the varying and possibly conflicting advice and information these athletes are receiving from several sources? I'm sure there's a lot of bad advice out there by trainers for hire who aren't properly certified trained, or even advice that doesn't fit the philosophy of your institution. Good question.
That is a really good question, and one that we battle. Man, we battle that on a daily basis. And some teams battle it more than others. We first, like, our first approach to manage that is like reach out to these people that you can start to see are having influence in the players' lives with a lot of their choices, and get to know them. And some teams you have to have some type of internal understanding of how are you going to handle this, because some teams are very okay with bring them in. It's this guy's guy. Let him in the building. Let him do whatever he wants. He's treating players on the table. He's lifting with them in the weight room. Then there's the other where you don't let them in the building, but you create a relationship with them, and that creates a bit of a boundary, which boundaries are completely appropriate in any relationship, and they respect boundaries. They know that when they're in the building, when their player is in the building that you guys are co-working with, that they're going to be under your guys. When they get out of the building, they're going to work with this external personal trainer, nutritionist, whoever it may be, but you guys have kind of a collegial understanding of what's going on. Kind of the same approach that we take when we might have somebody refer somebody out during the off season. It definitely is an area of contention, and the lines get muddied, and there's a lot of battles, and you're not gonna be able to figure out all of them. But it definitely, if you can just do your best at creating a relationship so that you can co-mingle and work together for the betterment of this player, that's going to be the biggest thing that helps you along that path. But it definitely gets muddy. I mean, there's lots of examples out there.
So one of the questions that I have from speaking with coaches in the industry, not necessarily NBA, but just in general in professional sports, is coaches have told me sometimes that, you know, they may not be the decision makers in a lot of these things because the players have more power than the staff and coaches. They're the superstar. They're the ones earning millions upon millions of dollars. Is there that kind of issue too, where the player is kind of dictating some of this, or is it just depending on the personality?
Yeah, that is definitely prevalent as well. And you just got to kind of walk that line and manage it. And that one you got to manage very, each case is pretty independent of each other. Like you can't just throw out a blanket statement, this is how we're going to do, manage this. When it comes down to, if it's a star athlete or somebody who just feels like they need to be the decision maker, or it's going to be this way or not, you have to handle that area pretty delicately, similar to the ways I spoke on before. But what we're finding out now is that you just have to have you have to create a sense of accountability. So if this person is going to create, have this decision responsibility within your organization, say it's a player, superstar player, then you have to also make him accountable for those decisions. Same goes with anything. Hey, you need to lift this many times during the week. You're accountable to that. Make them accountable. You can't just kind of have this free flowing, come as you want, make decisions you want, practice when you want, don't practice when you want, kind of mentality. And by no means did we have that correct from the get-go. We've learned that really over the last even short time period. So creating accountability is going to be an area where that is going to help out the most with anybody, from the top player that's making the most money to the bottom player. And if you can hold that top player accountable for a lot of this stuff, for being the leader, he has the right to some of these decisions and to be in the mix with the coach and saying, hey, I need to play this many minutes, or hey, I'm not practicing today. As long as he understands, hey, we need to know what your thoughts are, and have open lines of communication. And then, like I said, have some accountability there, because if you don't have accountability for the top player, you're not going to have accountability for the bottom player. Even though you think you might have some leverage on that last player on your roster, they look to the top player, and they're the leader. And if he's being treated a certain way, that player is going to want to be treated that way as well. So it all really lines up around accountability.
So if there are, how many total in your squad?
For most of the seasons, about 15, 16.
Right. So those 15, 16, let's say you have a good chunk of them who are injured, maybe some who are out for long term, some who are out for short term. Do you feel a lot of pressure in the sense that, maybe you didn't do the offseason training right, or, why are all these people getting injured, Tony? What are you doing this, or what are you not doing? Do you feel that, or is it just a case of we have such good, I'm not trying to dig holes here where, you set yourself up. Do you feel it as an athletic trainer of just kind of like responsible in some ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to have some sense of I'm responsible, or we're responsible for this, and all that doesn't freeze you. That should just motivate you. Like, you don't want to go looking for the newfound fad just to fix an issue. There's no quick fixes. So yeah, look internally, be critical in your thinking in, hey, are we doing everything we need to do in this area? Let's say you have a rash of ACL injuries in whatever sport you're in. Yeah, you're gonna you're going to need to look at some of your processes. It could be even be screening processes prior to them coming in. Are we having, some issues in mental health, the mental health area? Well, why is that happening? And that's an area that we all need to be very aware of, and an area that also can cause players to not be able to play, or, people who are on staff not be able to work. So what are we doing in that area to make sure that we're taking care of our staff and our players? And what are we doing in that area to look, prior to us hiring anybody? Are we looking and seeing, hey, this is maybe an area that this person has an issue with? How do we continue care? Or how do we take on care? Or how do we establish care? Or is this somebody that we might just pass on? And I think that happens within any organization, that we just have to, make sure that we're hiring the right people, and making sure that we're screening for the right fit. And
so are you involved in kind of draft decisions? Do you check out players before draft day and things like that?
Yeah, so we do a lot of that. That's a big portion of what would be happening in the next months, leading up to combine, and the draft. Is we will have 70 plus players coming in through the facility, doing testing, meeting with each one of us, seeing our physicians, meeting with our scouts, our front office, and doing interviews. And so that is a big portion of what we go through. And then creating just a database of, this is what, this athlete's profile is from previous injury to, how they're feeling and what they're dealing with now, on the medical side, to what their strength and endurance profiles are on the strength and conditioning side, just so that you have a picture of this player. And then all the scouts and the unbelievable amount of work they put in throughout the entire year, just, meeting people, talking to them about the players, doing whatever they can from a player facing standpoint, and just getting as much information as possible before you make an investment.
You have a lot of roles and responsibilities beyond just, what people might think in terms of ankle taping, that typical, injury care and prevention, make sure they don't, injure themselves too badly on the court. You're doing all these other things that require a lot of other skills: communication, teamwork, planning ahead, all these injury prevention, not just, as you said, for the next game, but also long-term success of the player and the team. In light of all that work, assuming we don't have any other questions coming through the chat box, so if you have questions for Tony, ask them now. But in light of all this work, you're a really busy guy. You've already talked about kind of your day schedule and that you're on the road a ton. How do you avoid the stress and burnout that can occur by investing so much time and energy into what you do? And what strategies do you have?
That's a great question, and one that takes a lot of effort to create balance. You hear this question come up if I'm speaking to high school students, athletic training students in college that want to be athletic trainers, and there's lots of research out there around burnout and so on and so forth. But what I tell people, and I think this is just me trying to understand this question myself, is you have to put in the effort to create the balance. So yeah, you're going to put in effort in work. You're going to be gone. You're going to be at the games. You're going to be, doing everything you can to make sure you're doing your best work. When you come home, so for me as a family of 4, so I have 2 young children and my wife and a dog.
Got to count the dog.
You got it. Oh yeah. How do I create balance? And that's by coming home and putting in effort for them as well. And that just fills my cup. So, instead of just leaking out fluid out of the bottom and pouring into others, how do I fill my own cup? Mm-hmm. And that's by service to my family, religion, taking time for myself. When I'm on the road, finding moments to just take a step back and breathe. One of the nice routines that I have when I go on the road, because I'm on the road a lot, is going for runs. I'm not a fan of running or ever was. I played baseball kind of through high school, and running was punishment.
Yeah. We can talk about that, by the way. Running.
Yeah, that's a whole nother situation. But I just, it allows me to clear my mind, get ready and prepped for the day, like internally, have some mindful moments, so that I can just be where my feet are, is kind of a term that we use around our organization, and not be in like 600 different places, because I'm only good where I'm at. And I need to be in one spot. So when I come home, I need to be at home. I can't be on the phone. I can't be making calls, even though that there are some things that come up last minute. My family knows that that's part of the expectations. But just being where I need to be at that moment, and then trying to find those areas that fill my cup up so I can empty it out. I'm just a service-minded person, and I easily can empty my cup out over and over again, until I'm lying on the floor and have nothing left to give. So it's just best for me to find where are those things that can fill my cup up. So those are a few of those items.
Cool. So last question, if you were to give advice to somebody going into the sports profession, not necessarily athletic training, not necessarily coaching, obviously, that's kind of my area, but just in sports in general, in terms of somebody who's maybe looking to go into the sports profession in one of those fields, athletic director, coach, athletic trainer, somewhere in there, sports psychologist, what have you learned through your career, both in junior college and privately MBA, that you would suggest that they kind of adapt, learn from, etc.?
Yeah, I think starting off would be just try and do as much as possible. If you find yourself with some time, that's a good, and like free time, go out and be a volunteer, work in a physical therapy clinic, volunteer for a YMCA soccer team, as a coach, or any type of team. I think that's where I feel like I got on the right track. Is I just didn't, in college, I was an athletic training student. So I went to school, I did the athletic training stuff I needed to do. I went to the classes, I went to, and worked the teams that I needed to work with. Those were the requirements, and they're heavy. But I also went out and volunteered at hospitals. I volunteered on Friday nights for Friday night football. Like some of those high schools didn't even have athletic trainers. So I'm a student, I'm the only one there. And I saw some amazing things and some crazy things, and people appreciated me. And it was a awesome time of my life. I worked in a PT clinic as an assistant. And I just kept getting my feet wet. If there was a door that opened, I was either trying to squeeze through it or I was running through it. Just because I loved this kind of stuff. I did 2 internships with the NFL, and all of those things that I've done have kind of lent me to where I am today, is what I put on it. I can't tell you specifically, you got to go and get an NBA or NFL internship if you want to be in pro sports. We're hiring a lot of people. Our departments are big, and we're looking for the best talented person for this position and for these positions. It might not be that person that has had, that has the best recommendations from the 4 coaches in the NBA. It might be somebody who we have met over time that has worked with the player, or that has put out research that we have interest in, or even social media pieces and platforms like, this looks interesting, let's check them out. So we're headhunting, and we're looking for talented people, but it's really the work that you finally have put in over time that gives you the experience that once you're in that position will keep you there. So I would just continue to not give up. I'd keep volunteering. I keep working and finding those areas that if your goal is to be in sport in any level or professional sport, just don't be complacent with doing the requirements.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I'm hearing this a lot, and I think it's a trend. Every time I do an interview, I'm hearing about this professional development and just continuing to get better every day. And I think it's consistently across the people we interview. That's what we hear. Thanks so much for joining me, and of course, don't forget to subscribe, like, follow wherever you're watching this. Of course, we're on YouTube, Twitter, and also Facebook. But don't forget to do that so you get notified of the next time we go live. But Tony, thanks so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And
I appreciate your time. It was great.
My hope is that one of these days we can actually do it in person and get another interview and maybe a little better quality video feed, and you won't be dashing off for hailstorms.
Hey, whatever it takes, whatever it takes.
Thanks again.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.